Hello and welcome back to the Cinema Tirana YouTube channel. I am Stefano Tirana. We are a community of Christians from across traditions coming together to talk about movies, media, and the world from a Christian perspective. Today we are looking at the movie that ended the modern biblical epic, Exodus, Gods, and Kings. This will be a part of a series I think I'll call The Bible on Film. I'm going to be looking at a few films that adapt the Bible onto screen and take a look at some of their pros, some of their cons, how they work, why they work, or in this case, how they kind of miss the mark. So, Exodus, Gods, and Kings is directed by Ridley Scott. He's well known for movies like Blade Runner, Gladiator. He's a big-time director. And in 2014, he took a jab at the Exodus story. You may remember that 2014 is also the year of the very controversial Noah movie directed by Darren Aronofsky. And these movies proved a 1-2 punch to the end of the modern big budget biblical adaptation, with Noah being very controversial for its subject matter and this movie also being controversial for its subject matter, but with the added problem of it being a not very good movie. It was critically panned and lost a lot of money at the box office. So let's do a bit of an autopsy on this movie, take a look at some of its problems, and present some solutions for perhaps future biblical film adaptations. And let's get right into it. As a preface, let's talk about accuracy when it comes to biblical adaptations. When a biblical movie comes out, it's always kind of critiqued on the premise that it should be exactly like the Bible. This is it's a fine critique on films, but when adapting a sometimes 2-chapter biblical story into a 90-plus minute film, a lot of stuff gets added. Even a film like The Passion of the Christ takes a lot of liberties with adding new material, despite it being very well known for presenting some form of biblical accuracy. This is it's fine. It's part of filmmaking to make a good, compelling story on screen. You have to use certain elements and present certain things in certain ways to certain audiences. And in some cases, that means adding to the biblical text. In some cases, it means not putting in every single last detail. But in some cases, going too far from the source material becomes a big problem, and we'll see that in this movie. So let's take a look at the story's main character, Moses, played by Christian Bale. Christian Bale does a great job with what he's given, but even with his performance, you can tell he's kind of confused as to what Moses' motivation is. In this movie, Moses is a general while he's part of the royal family. This is actually taken from early Jewish tradition that Moses had kind of this military past life before the events of Exodus. And that's fine, but it takes up the majority of the first 30 minutes of the film. And the film takes about 30 minutes to get into any kind of the biblical story as we know it. Here, Moses is also kind of like a Batman ninja character. He fights a bunch of guys. He carries around a sword and not a staff, which I think is a very symbolically resonant thing for them to change. And instead of being an old man in his 80s, Moses is like a young 30-something-year-old, which is kind of fine. You kind of see that in movies like The Prince of Egypt. That's another movie we'll be talking about, I'm sure. But it really seems evident that Ridley Scott does not understand what makes the character of Moses tick. Here, Moses is very much a man of war and is not very, very true to the essence of Moses. This film got a bit of heat for its portrayal of Yahweh. Here, Ridley Scott chooses to portray Yahweh as an 8 or 9-year-old boy, which is a very bold artistic choice. I wouldn't probably go that direction, but I don't know what the angel of the Lord looks like. The Bible doesn't really say other than, he looks like a person. But nevertheless, making him a boy kind of puts the film into an interesting spot where the boy becomes kind of whiny and vengeful. And it kind of leads to this portrayal of Yahweh being this kind of like impulsive little toddler with a temper tantrum. It kind of robs the story of the driving force or the motivation to provide a compelling narrative. Another issue with this film is its strict coherence to the material worldview. It kind of perpetuates this materialism. It provides kind of naturalistic explanations for a bunch of things, all of them except for the death of the firstborn. Even the parting of the Red Sea is kind of anticlimactic. When you think of parting the Red Sea, you think of Charlton Heston, the walls coming up on either side. But here it's kind of like the tide rolling back. Eventually the tide comes back in and it's like, and you get that kind of imagery, but it's like the film takes every opportunity it can to explain away things scientifically instead of, supernaturally in the worldview of the authors and of everybody in the story. And maybe the biggest issue here is I'm just gonna say it's too dang long. I'm sure if anybody's watched the original Ten Commandments Charlton Heston film, it's like 4 hours long, there's an intermission. But here, this film, I had to watch it in several chunks. There's just a lot of fluff added in. You don't get to the biblical narrative for 30 minutes. And then you don't get to the burning bush scene until an hour into the film. So all this kind of added weird family dynamic stuff that isn't in the Bible. All these military expeditions that Moses goes on really bogged down the experience of the film and the portrayal of the narrative. And in comparison to the Bible, it takes about 3 chapters to get to the burning bush scene. And the book of Exodus really isn't all that concerned with the origin of where Moses comes from. So to take this long in this film, I think it just indicates the lack of research perhaps into the source material and into the scholarship surrounding the source material. But yeah, there's a long list of films. There's a lot of events that are changed for seemingly no reason. Instead of Moses defending a fellow Hebrew, resulting in his exile of Egypt, he's just kind of like found out to be an Israelite and is banished by his brother. And instead of Aaron going to meet Moses in the wilderness, Aaron gets like maybe 3 lines in the film. Miriam gets more lines than Aaron, despite Aaron being a very pivotal figure for the entire Pentateuch. Kind of adds up to a strange and weird representation of the book of Exodus. And let's get into things that probably would have helped fix this movie. Then again, who am I to say? I'm just a guy on the internet. So with that being said, let's take a look at things that would fix this film. So this movie seems to have a pretty big disdain for the original source material, which is disheartening to say the least, considering that the source material is so rich and so deep, and there's so much study that's gone into this for like literally 2,000, 3,000 years. You would think that there'd be more work done to present this narrative well. Kind of, here's an analogy. It's like going to watch a Batman film, but Batman uses guns, and he's not Bruce Wayne. He's just kind of some random detective guy, and the Joker is not even a supervillain. He's just kind of a clown, and he does kids' birthday parties, and that's the movie. It seems like Ridley Scott really has a disdain for the original source material and for kind of the Christian worldview, considering the film Prometheus. So maybe it's just some more adherence to the original source material. I think part of the reason why this film bombed was the alienation of its intended audience. People have certain expectations of what the biblical story is, which you can definitely subvert by being truer to the source material or presenting it in a new way that hasn't been done before. But by changing so many things, changing the message of the movie, you really alienate any kind of religious excitement for the film. So you could take the character of Moses, for example. You could make him, you could still have him be a warrior general character, but by the time he gets to the burning bush, he's already an old man. That's kind of his past life. He's a very flawed character. He's not trusting. He doesn't even trust himself. He can't even talk. He can barely see. God is standing literally right in front of him, and he's still like, I don't think this is a good idea. And part of his arc could be that, you know, he learns how to trust. He learns how to trust God. He learns how to trust Aaron. He learns how to trust his family. And all while completing this grand and epic scale work. And the character of Yahweh in this film could be fixed as well. Yahweh is a loving character who redeems his people out of Egypt, who frees them from spiritual bondage, who frees them from physical bondage. And the Exodus is a very impactful film for Christians, as it's the language of our salvation, and for Jews it's the foundational story of their nation, from when Israel goes from being a people to literally a cohesive people of God under Yahweh. Just look at like the way this film treats the Passover. It's kind of like spooky time, and it's kind of like Moses has to beg God not to kill all their firstborn, and he comes up with this plan. He's like, I don't know if it's gonna work, but guys, do this, and it turns out it does work. And God's like, I wanted to kill the kids, you know, like it doesn't make sense. And the end result is like this film that feels just kind of vapid, taking away all these essential aspects of the narrative, get rid of any kind of emotional impact that this film could and should have had to make it a good Hollywood film. The sad thing is that this film kind of resulted in the end of the biblical epic, at least for a while. There's kind of been a lot of smaller things. There's been the Chosen series, a few Jesus movies, but I think studios just kind of don't want to touch or put a lot of money into these films, unfortunately. So I think to make a great biblical adaptation, you need people that are passionate about the source material. I think you should get Bible scholars involved to bring out what they've been studying, what they've been working on, what generations and generations of people have been doing while reading these stories, and get great filmmakers on board. I think Ridley Scott's a very, very talented filmmaker. I just don't think he likes the Bible all that much. So why he chose to do Exodus is beyond me. Other than like the prestige aspect of doing an epic Ten Commandments movie. But yeah, I think having all those, being more truthful to the source material, I think is gonna bring in audiences that felt actually alienated before. And yeah, hopefully this isn't the end of the biblical epic as we know it on screen, but only time will tell. With that being said, I would like to thank you for watching and making it this far into the movie. If you have anything to add, please leave it down below. If you disagree with me, leave that down below too. This is a place for discussion. Also, if you want to suggest any movies to do in this biblical series, please let me know. I'd love to get some suggestions on that. And with that being said, God bless, and thanks for watching.